Welcome to Unconscious Evolution, Stephanie. It's so amazing to have you here today.
There. Good to be here. Love it. Super excited.
Listeners, you're in for it today, and I've been so excited for this episode and to have Stephanie join us. Let's learn about my amazing guest. Stephanie Majors is the Chief of Staff at the Sales Collective, where she assists in developing and overseeing all aspects of daily revenue, sales, finance, marketing, and client operations. Wow, that's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful, yeah.
Her current ambition is to live life unfiltered. And if anybody knows Stephanie, she is definitely achieving that. So live life unfiltered and uninhibited by the fears and expectations of what society places on her. Steph's contact information and social media details will be listed in the show notes. So please reach out to her. She's a hoot, but you're about to find out. So, Stephanie, thank you again for opening your personal life to all of us today. What would you like to share? And has anything new come up for you over the last couple of hours?
Ironically, because I live such a what I would claim to be a very boring life. But I'm a Gen Xer, and we just kind of stay in our lawns, if you will. But I think for me, and for those of you that know or have followed me or just peep me out on LinkedIn, I had put out a post yesterday that had said, um, "I won't be remembered as a woman who kept her mouth shut," and I'm okay with that. And I think that sums me up to a very truthful T, 100%. And I think when I woke up this morning, I got a couple notifications of reshares and from a couple people that I had tagged into it, and just even a couple DMs. And I think what I was floored by, and it's a pretty weird admission, um, but I'm growing with it. When I say grow, I'm learning and kind of accepting what has happened in my past and just kind of how I view the future, and growing my network of women and the support that is there. I have had a very tumultuous time in previous past friendships, specifically, whether working or in a professional or personal setting. And it can get very catty. It can get very competitive, specifically. And when I'm already a competitive person, it can kind of make it very tumultuous and very toxic at times. And I've always made very bad choices, um, in my younger years, of selecting people within my inner circle. And I think the worst thing anybody can do is compete with your friends. Like, it shouldn't be like that. They're there to uplift you. They're there to support you. They're there to keep it real with you. And I think, um, there's always been lacking in that. And with growing my network and being more truthful in who I am and who I'm not, how I communicate, how I think, what I believe, and being completely unfiltered, being completely honest with myself and with the ethers that be out in Linkerland and Instagram and every single social media platform that I'm on, that I think, um, what I discovered waking up is like, damn, I know some really kick-ass women, and they're strong and they're beautiful, and they've just been through so much crap, and being able to learn from them and to know that it's like, I'll get messages saying thank you, and gosh, I would never have been able to say that, but I really appreciate the things that you're able to say. And whether it's right or wrong or anywhere in between, it's just my truth. And knowing that other people can share in that, specifically women, has really been a game changer for me, I would say, within the past year, because I wouldn't be who I am now without them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I woke up with just a great sense of gratitude for them, and for new relationships, existing ones, and everything in between. And I think it's a great thing to feel, especially then coming on with you today. And you're one of those individuals, and everybody's so different and they have their own strengths. And some people are very soft, and it's hard for me to speak about emotions, even though I'm an emotive person. Like, getting to me is very hard. I have a very dear friend. She's like, I'll force you into a hug. I'm like, do that. But we kid about it because she's been able to break down my walls. And I think it just takes a lot of special effort to do that. But I'm that much more grateful that I've been able to kind of gather a tribe of amazing, beautifully different humans. And I'm just like, I woke up very grateful today
Yeah.
for that.
I want to mention very quickly, you mentioned the post that you posted yesterday. So today we're recording on Thursday, October 10. And so her post was from October 9. So listeners, feel free to go back and take a look at it. But what I thought was so ironic was that before I even saw your post, or I think before you even hit post or scheduled it to go out, I had already tagged you in somebody else's post about somebody. It's like, hey, let us know if somebody else in this network inspires you. And you were the only name I listed. And then I think it was 15 minutes later that you had tagged me in this just phenomenal, like, I am woman, hear me roar, essentially
Yeah.
post. And I was like, look at that. The stars aligned. The universe knew something was going on. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. I wanted to message you to say, did you realize that I tagged you as an inspirational
Didn't. I
woman?
did until after the fact, and I thought that was so funny too. I'm
Yeah,
just like, that's weird. It's
I
weird.
know.
Kismet's a funny thing.
It is. It is. So you talked about that you've been through. So what I do know about you, you've been through quite a lot in your life. And actually, I would say that yes, you are an emotional person. I've never physically been in your presence, so I can't speak to the hug situation. But I, having talked with you before and sharing certain things with you, and now we've been connected for quite some time, you've been through a lot in your life. So you talked about now making sure that you're attracting and inviting the people into your circle that feel right, that empower you, that lift you, that are women. What do you think? Let's go back, a couple decades or even one decade or whatever's comfortable for you,
Sure.
and what it was in your life that maybe you were dealing with that was allowing you to invite the wrong people in, or just not the right people.
Oh, for sure. I have a penchant for lost souls and healing, wanting to heal people. I was raised and grew up in a loving home. My father was not emotional. My mother was. And so I had a pretty decent balance of logic and emotion. Um, and so I think taking that and understanding that, I was very fortunate to never want for anything. Um, when I hit 18, I grew up in a very religious household. I went to Southern Baptist school from kindergarten to 12th grade. Organized religion was a huge, huge, huge foundation for my life. Um, because I'm a transparent person, I don't necessarily adhere to organized religion. However, I do believe in higher powers. I believe there's something out there greater than us, and in being a good person doing good deeds. So just taken with that, because of that, seeing people that I am attracted to, whether friendship level, partnership, everything in between, to see people hurting or not having, I wanted to fix them. I wanted to fix it. I I will take care of it. Don't worry about it. I did that at the sacrifice of my own well-being. I was homeless twice. I lost everything twice because I couldn't walk away, because I would not cut ties, because I would not say, I can't do this anymore, because my fealty, my loyalty to that person and to making the situation them better superseded my own. And that's been a very difficult thing for me to get away from. I've had to end friendships, which were very difficult. Even probably worse than a breakup, if I'm totally honest, because I think if you're a friend, you are probably your most truest self, I think, with those people. Um, which is why I'm a true believer in your partner being your best friend. Otherwise, how can you really truly have a relationship with that person? But I digress. But I think um, choosing broken people for most of my life, and I swear to God, it was probably until my 40s, and that's a hard thing for me to admit, because you look back in life and you think, oh shit, oh, I wasted so much time. Um, but ironically, I don't regret it. I knew I was able to play a part in those people's lives, and they haven't forgot me. They didn't know that I was making this ungodly sacrifice and choosing them over me. Um, but I think at the same time, it was detrimental to my growth for me to have to go through that. And I think it's really hard for certain people to admit, like I learned by being burned, and I'm stubborn that way, and I'm not just going to be like, Stephanie, don't do that. Why? Don't tell me not to do it. I'm just that person, and I'll do it anyway. One, probably because it's just in me. I'm going to prove you wrong because I can do anything, which is a great confidence to have of yourself. I think, however, me learning to start listening to people who may have a little bit more life experience or experience things that I haven't, been like, oh, I probably should have listened to them because it would have saved me an awful lot of pain, an awful lot of hurt, and an awful lot of tears.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going back and now moving forward, which is why I say I make far more calculated, well thought out steps when it comes to even networking, connecting with people, having conversations. That's all energy. And I don't want to give it to people, one, who aren't appreciative, but two, just don't align with my beliefs and my way of thinking, and looking at other humans as being equal, looking at other women as being beautiful and wonderful. I just don't need all the other extra stuff that's out there. And so it's hard because my natural inclination is to not, but um, it's helped me find peace. And I think that's most important for everyone to do in their life, ultimately.
And that actually finding peace has a lot to do with this next question I'm going to ask you. Because most of us, yes, we are born at being certain people, right? We have certain emotions. We're empathetic or we're not. I mean, like all the things, right? But then as we become teenagers, we don't realize some of these inner injuries, right? These pains, these traumas, these whatever it is. And then we end up becoming people somewhat based on our trauma. And so having that in mind, right? You ready for this?
Bring it
Who
on, sister.
who were you really trying to save? Like who was the inspiration between you wanting to help and save everybody? Was it yourself or was there somebody?
The little girl in me that was afraid, that was too afraid of everything. Talk to my mother, she will tell you. Not scared in that sense, but just like not being able to look people in the eye, not being able to say no, not being able to understand. Like, for example, I'm adopted, always knew, was never kept a secret. My I remember one of the very first books that I had was Why Was I Adopted? It was a big white hardcover book. My mom would read it to me. I didn't think anything different. I didn't care. Like, it was just kind of something that was. And when I was 7 years old, we had a family reunion at my grandparents' house. on my dad's side. And one of my aunts, it was my uncle's ex-wife, and I only provide context for it because didn't really have too much of a relationship with her, but they were reconnecting my uncle's twins and kind of reintegrating them into the family. And she had pulled me aside. I was by myself, and I can't remember the question she asked me, but I remembered, and I can't even remember my response, but I remember her telling me, and I remember her face to this day. She was like, "Well, it's not like you're really a part of the family." And I was just like I'm 7 years old, right? And so I'm already adopted. There's already an innate sense of abandonment that we all have. I didn't come from that. This person didn't want me, because that's a childlike way of thinking, right? You don't have all the information. It was the 70s. It was a closed adoption. Didn't have any information. Didn't know Jack from Jill or anything in between. So you conjure up these reasonings of not being wanted and not being loved. And so that comment, I never told my parents what she had said until I was probably at least in my 20s. And my mom she was so heartbroken. She's like, "Why would you never have told me that?" And it just fed into something. And then it kind of gets you thinking like, why wouldn't I have said that? Because I was so afraid of it hurting my mom. Like how at 7 was I afraid of hurting my mom's feelings when some grown up, atrocious soul would say that to a child, would say that to a family member. Um, and I always go back to that because I think it was a turning point for me of like, I'm alone. And so feeling alone out there in the world, I think is like, I would never, ever, ever. And I get so emotional about it because you don't want anyone to feel that because it's a shitty thing to feel. And I think that's why I post what I do. That's why I say the things that I say. Because I don't want people to be alone. I would never want anybody to feel that way, ever.
Yeah. See, it's for that reason that I have been so drawn and connected to you, because my my story is different. Everybody's got a different story, but that feeling of being alone and
Yeah.
isolated and not able to share is a terrible, terrible place for a child to live.
Yeah.
And I feel that in your sensitivity. That's why I said in the beginning, I do feel you're an emotional person. I
Yeah.
mean, because now you've got it. You're like, this is me. I'm going to tell everybody because I was young and quiet once, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And because it's an amazing new step in life to realize that your voice matters and that your voice in helping others feel that sense of belonging matters. And that's a huge, I feel it from you. I know a lot of other people do. And I thank you so much for sharing. I know that was emotional for you. And
I always
um,
do that. So like this is how it comes out. I'm happy,
yeah.
I cry. I
Oh,
find something very funny, I cry. And it's an interesting thing, but I'm okay with it. And I think it's just very cathartic and being able to do that for people. And I think also even past that to reaffirm that I've had a few posts before. You probably go back in the archive. I lost my cousin to suicide, and um, he was like my brother. I'm an only child in my adoptive family, and he was the closest in age. He was my person. He was my first friend, and he was going through so much. And I think that also plays into of the feeling of not wanting others to be alone because he felt alone. He felt completely isolated away from people, places, and things because he felt like he was being judged for that. Probably the least judgmental person you'll ever meet. I worked in a men's prison, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so you did that. Like, logically thinking, oh, I can't believe you did that, type of thing. But, they're there and they're already being judged, and they're serving their time. So who am I to really sit back and do that more to them? And so with him, I think it just reaffirms me saying what needs to be said, doing what needs to be done, and just living in remembrance of him, because he was just a sweet, kind, just he's one of those people that just come along. You don't meet many people like that in your lifetime. He was just that guy that everybody gravitated to, and if I can just have like an nth of that energy, then I know that I'm really doing good in life. And so I think everything good in me, especially reaching out and being there for people, is always in remembrance of him. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's beautiful, because there's certainly, when there is such a tragic death
yeah,
in your life, especially somebody that, well, actually, not even especially somebody, because, I preach so much about not comparing grief, because
yeah,
every relationship is different. It doesn't mean one portion of grief in your life is more important than the other. It all
for sure.
affects, right. It all affects us differently. Um, but there's something about grief that, if we allow it into our lives, to truly accept it, right, and not listen to the pressure of society, which is, it's time to get back to work. Oh, you're still dealing with that, it's time to move on, maybe you need professional help, like, essentially all the bullshit that people say because they're uncomfortable with your grief. They just don't know what to say, and I don't blame them, because we just aren't raised to sit in the muck with others, right? We're not raised to be like, I'm just going to pat you on the back while you're crying. And it's going to be, I'm okay with that. Like, it's okay for you to be upset. Um, and now I just lost my train of thought with this a little bit, but with that grief, I'm back on track now.
I do it like all the time. It's a
Yeah.
fun thing about being almost 50, but yeah,
Yep.
great.
Yep. It just gets worse, by the way.
Great.
Yeah. But you can embrace it, it's the way it
Mhm.
is. So, like, with that grief, when we do embrace it, when we do accept it, when we say, okay, I need time, I'm accepting this upset, this devastation, there's a giant amount of transformation that is paired with it. And we can't control it. It just happens. So we know that you're a giver. It's very important for you to help others to feel a sense of belonging, so they're not alone. What else do you think you picked up that maybe surprised you in some of these really difficult times that you've gone through, that you've grieved? And of course, you're still grieving, because that's grief, that's loss. But has anything surprised you in what you've done, and changed your life, or has changed your thinking and what you've learned?
I have, whereas before, I think the biggest contrast is I would always fall in line before because I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want attention. I didn't want people to look at me. I didn't want, just, I'm invisible. Just keep me that way. I'm much better in the shadows. And to some certain degree, I still am. It's just, even on the professional side, I'm much better in the background. Ironically, I work in sales and organizations where I find the most kind of fulfillment. But I think personally for me, I didn't want to be seen. And now, because of that giver, because I don't want people to feel alone, I feel empowered, probably specifically within the past 5, 6 years or so, to stand up for people who can't for themselves. And I feel empowered to do it. Because like, I don't care. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm the bully against the bully. One, because I know how to do it. Three, because you're not going to talk to that person that way. Like, that's not okay. Like, I will come to those people's defenses, because most of the time people did not come to mine. And I love it. Like, I love doing it, not because I don't do it for recognition. I don't. And most people don't even think I'm doing it, but it's a way of me being able to give back in the most authentic way that I can, because I need to do what's right. And even if I am the only one standing on that hill, best believe I'm standing 10 toes down, locked in, and I'm looking you dead in the eye, and I'm going to tell you that's wrong. You don't treat people that way. You don't do people like that. It's not nice. And everything in between. But if I have the power to change it, if I have the power to defend somebody, to protect somebody, then that's exactly what I'm going to do, especially for the younger generation, younger women specifically. I've mentored a few different women, and helping them be able to stand in their power is something that I reiterate time and time and time again, because not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody is going to, you can be the best fucking person there is out there. You're still going to have enemies. You're still going to have people who are just like, ew, I don't like that. And it's just, they're not going to like your light simply because it's on you and not on them. So keep shining.
Yeah.
Forget it. Who cares? And they'll eventually go away. They'll go and learn to hate somebody else, and you're just going to go about your life. And I think it was a hard lesson, a very long lesson that I had to learn. And if I can speed up that lesson for anybody else, that's ultimately what I would hope to do.
So I love that. And, and when we talk about the lesson, there's a process to that. And you said it took you a long time. So I know for me, when I went from feeling unworthy and insignificant, like I could die and there's not going to be anything really of value that is said about me other than maybe I was a good friend, I mean, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's what I think about myself, and all that, that negative inner dialogue, that self-sabotage talk, and um just absolutely not believing in myself. And so that was my story. And then with that, then there were like all these steps that came after for me to get on the other side of that. Can you tell us how that process was for you? Because you went from, I don't want to be seen, to, I'm the one that's going to be seen, essentially, because I'm sticking up for everybody. I mean,
For
that's
sure.
like, that's two totally different ends of the spectrum. So what was all that like for you, and how were you able to overcome to get to the other side? Because that's not easy.
You know, I've learned, I'd say probably from 2009 to current, like life is finite. And people say that all the time, unexpected deaths. I think honestly, I've had an influx of people that I've known, that I've loved, that have passed away before their time. And it was so unexpected. A former partner I was with for 12 years had passed in his sleep. This was back in 2009. My cousin, my birth mother, had passed away. And this was at the same time where my current partner was in the hospital because he had an aortic aneurysm that just happened to be found out during a random x-ray, that it was actually positioned wrong. Like, we should never have found it. Caveat to that, he should never have been here. And knowing that he could be taken at any time, seeing other people who have been taken, it's like, okay, Stephanie, like, I'm a very calculated, analytical, logical person. And sometimes I take too much time planning because I'm a perfectionist as well. Um, and sometimes you are so stuck in getting it right that you're just not getting it at all. And you miss life, you miss opportunities, and you can miss love that way. And I don't, it's almost like now it's like this match has been lit, and it's just like, okay, I got to live life, which is great. And I needed that for me. And people will still say I'm calculating and plan too much, but it's like, no, if you knew how I really was, like, you'd understand. I made a lot of progress. um, but I think for me, it's seeing people taken too soon. It's knowing I didn't get an opportunity to say the things that I wanted to say. Um, close the loop on relationships that needed to be closed, but knowing that when I go to sleep, that I said what needed to be said. and that people know not only what I feel for them, but they know the most authentic me that there is. And I think those deaths were truly the biggest thing for me, that I've experienced, and because it just caught me off guard, and you never know when it's time.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's so funny. We live our lives afraid to make a change, right? We're like, oh, but it's going to be different. It's going to be unfamiliar. I don't know what's coming. We don't know what's coming all day long. I mean, anything at
Right.
any point can happen, but we're so used to our routine, right? We're so used to what we're expecting. We go to work, we do this, we have lunch. It's like every Friday we go to the pizza place or, whatever it might be. And I always bake the same cookies at Christmas and or at Hanukkah, the New Year, whatever it might be. But we don't realize the extent to how much we're leaving out and uninviting by only living according to that routine.
Yeah,
I
hands
mean,
down.
yeah.
I'm a messy person. It's funny, and people who know me, my partner especially, is funny. He's like, "How can you be so organized in your work life and just at home? Like, I'm a mess. Like, it's just." I hate laundry. I hate dishes. My house is clean, but it's lived in, okay? And so it's balance. You need balance in life. And that's mainly what it is, because I think you just can't always be on, and you shouldn't have the expectations, and you shouldn't have other people. Not everything is about you. Not everything is about me. People are living their own lives, and it's just like, okay. And I'm not aloof, but I'm also just not going to judge somebody based on a bad day. And I think that's also a huge lesson for me, is to not take everything so personally. And it's hard for me. And I think it's hard for most humans in life, just to be like, why was somebody like that?
Yeah.
Well, I can think of all the times I was probably like that, but then I also knew I was having a really shitty day and wasn't my best self. But we each kind of get a clean slate every day, and apologize when you need to, and love harder when you can, and I think it balances
Yeah.
everything out.
For some reason, a memory of the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Have you read it?
I've not. I've
Okay.
not.
I definitely recommend it. I know you will love it. So there's a part in the book, and I'm not giving away anything. I'm just giving away this, like, 2-page part of the book.
Sure.
But she's married to Abby Wambach, the former professional soccer player. So the listeners that don't know, so Glennon is a writer. She has published many books, and Untamed is one of them. And so she talks a lot about herself and what she's learned about herself in these books. And in this one part of the book, she's talking about how it's a Saturday, right? And Glennon is frantic cleaning, right? She's cleaning, she's like doing the dishes, she's dusting, she's vacuuming. And Abby is, chilling on the sofa watching TV with her legs up, right? She's like, I've been busy all week, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And so Glennon essentially, makes a smart aleck comment like, how can you just sit there when all these things need to be done? And Abby says, well, I've been doing things all week. I want some quiet time right now. Well, Glennon's like, but I'm doing all the work myself. You're not helping, and so Abby turns off the TV and starts cleaning. But now she's doing it out of resentment, because she's doing it because Glennon is expecting her to do it, because Glennon's doing it, because Glennon is all obsessive about it and gets mad at Abby for not thinking the same things. And I'm like, oh my God, when I read that book, I was like, oh, I do that all the time. And in my mind, I have this fight with my partner. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm doing this and you're not doing this, and how unfair it is. And oh my God. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I just created this whole thing all due to my own ridiculous expectations. Everybody's different.
Yeah,
Like, everybody gets to live their own life.
for
And
sure.
we forget that because we're taught like this one thing. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it, but we're taught this word: treat others as you would like others to treat you. So I highly argue that, because other people probably don't want to be treated the way that you want to be treated, right? Like, maybe you want to be treated with very direct behavior. It's like, just tell me, don't beat around the bush. where somebody else is like, no, I really need you to kind of be gentle and like slowly walk me through it. So that saying is very self centered, but we don't realize it. We
Mhm.
don't realize it. Treat people for who they are, not for how you want to be treated. I mean, what do you think?
I think many people are not capable of looking outside themselves. And it's not a slam on people. It's not, I, you have to be purposeful in it. And I think, and this is something that I'm really, that I preach and or advocate for is meeting people where they're at. And I got into a conversation with, I also work at a nonprofit for um, addiction recovery, self harm, kind of focused around that. And Cindy, she's amazing. I just have to put that out. She's an incredible woman. Um, was addicted to heroin. Many other drugs, has been clean for 27 years, and so she's a huge advocate, and she is really big on not. She's like, I believe in meeting people where they're at, wherever that may be. I can go back down a road I already traveled because I know my way back. I've been down that road. I've been back and forth. There are people who have never gone. So, how do you have an expectation of somebody who may not know you, doesn't live the life that you lived, has not had your experiences, who doesn't know your emotional state, who doesn't know any and all these things, but you have this expectation of them to know how you're setting people up for failure, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and it can damage relationships living with these expectations, whether it be high or not. But I think a lot of it comes with, hey, I'm this person, and you may not understand it, you may not like it, but I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be extremely transparent. Like, hey, like, I'm that person. Like, I can take direct, but just don't be a jackass to me. Like, I'm really big on respectful communication. Don't curse at me. Don't yell at me. Do not. My thing is, can I be an asshole? Yep. Can I say very direct things at times? Yes. Um, but what you're not going to make me feel as if I'm stupid, because it takes a lot for me to speak on something, but you're not going to be disrespectful and say and insult my intelligence, whether it be emotionally, intellectually, or anything in between. And I take that with me in trying to learn other people. That's why I'm highly observant, because I want to understand that person and read between the lines of what they don't say, how they react when somebody talks to them in a certain kind of way. It's like I take these weird mental notes of like, oh, that person doesn't like that. Or, oh, you can actually like be super direct with that person and they actually kind of like it. And I think people become so lazy and just want the quick answer and just be done and over with for certain things, that they just don't take the time to learn people. And it's something I've always enjoyed doing. Um, I'm highly introverted. I don't do well around a lot of people, so I'm very observant and I just kind of monitor them so I can kind of preemptively decide, like, do I really want to exchange energy with this person? I don't know. So if I hold back and wait, then that's kind of where would I go about doing that. But I think that's a great thing to bring up, because I I don't, because I'm not always kind to myself. So sometimes you need somebody to be kinder to you. And I think if you have low expectations of yourself, how can you have higher expectations of others?
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's so true. And it's unfortunate because in so much of our upbringing, at least I can only speak for mine. And, our parents do the best they can with how they were raised and where they are in life and what they're doing. Like there isn't a parent in this world that says, "Wow, I taught you that. That's not what I meant to teach you. I meant to teach you this, which was good and how to be supportive." But, based on who we grow up to be and as individuals, some of those things are going to conflict, right? Like some of those beliefs are going to conflict, or we just at some point become somebody that questions the status quo. So that's really what started happening for me. And you clearly started questioning the status quo when you found your voice. Because usually that's what happens. We find our voice and then we're like, wait a minute, this means something. I can speak up for this. But most of us, though, are just raised to just stay respectful and follow the rules and treat others as you would want them to treat you, and like, brighten someone's day if they're feeling sad, and all these things that have essentially taught us to be unsympathetic and
Yeah,
really to focus on how we feel, but we just don't know any better. So I want to change the conversation really quick because you talked about the nonprofit that you do some work with, and I'd love for you to mention the name and maybe why it's so important for you to do that work.
for sure. It is Chrysler Counselor, and it's headed up by Joe Carlini and Cindy Amador. And it was started from Joe initially. Cindy was his mentor currently. Um, and Joe and I had just started talking a few months ago via LinkedIn, and said, "Hey, this is me." It was just, more networking, getting to know somebody like, "Hey, I really like what you post." Like similar kind of to a lot of people that I bring in just into my world. Like, you're a very transparent person, that type of thing. And he has been, his story is very interesting. So I would highly suggest you start, that you look him up, because he's lived in a very crazy life. And he'll be the first to attest to that. And he's at a point now where he's making amends and living to give back to the community that almost took his life, making really bad choices, just in terms of drugs and people, and just getting involved in things that he didn't. He's very transparent, so I'm not saying anything that can be said online. But I'm drawn, one, to that transparency, to his want and dedication, as well as Cindy's, to just be out there and help and advocate and do things for the community that really nobody else is doing. And so that's where they had started Chrysler Counselor. And so what we're working on right now is not only donorship and partnerships and so forth, but truly doing outreach within communities. And they're in the Baltimore area right now. Hopefully, with anything, you hope it grows and becomes something bigger than what it is. But at least that's where they're starting. And I think for me, I've had my own previous issues with substance abuse, alcohol, opioid use, masking all these crazy emotions that I didn't want to feel. I don't want to feel the feels, because I feel things so deeply, and there's so much hurt, so much unresolved emotion, so much this that, like most people who do that, it's typically masking pain. Sorry, my dog is losing for stuff right now. Um, and being a part of something that can, if it's just one person, man, like then that's what's most important. And so I realize that there's finding a balance between not only working, but also giving back, also being able to do something for the greater good. And I know it sounds probably trite and just very kind of cliche, but I think when you get to a point where you're stable in your mind and your emotions, and it's like, it's doing for me, but it's also doing for others. I think that's the most important thing to do. And so, we just got our paperwork out and in, and so now we're, getting ready to grow the organization. And I've grown up around substance abuse. My father, my grandfather, my uncle, former alcoholic. I found out even about my birth mother from my sister that there's also a hereditary thing with the women in the family having substance abuse issues. I wouldn't have known that because I'm adopted, so I didn't reconnect with them till I was in my early 20s. But um, discovering that, like certain things, that's like, where would I even have gotten that from? Just didn't make sense, and so it all kind of fits together. And at the end of my cousin's life, he was highly addicted to drugs and alcohol, which I think also played part in him ending his life. So it's kind of one of those other things, like I'm doing it for myself, I'm doing it for others, and also for him. So,
Yeah. Well, so that I myself and our listeners can celebrate you and the hard work you're doing. You've been sober for
oh goodness, so clean, clear of pills and opioids for since 2017. Um, Clean and clear of marijuana since 2021. Clean and clear of alcohol since 2022. So
congratulations.
it's been kind of a gradual thing, but at the same time, it was what I had to do for me, and I've been clean since, and it's interesting. It's hard because there are times where I very much just want, like, oh, social, like, and that's kind of that crux for me is social drinking, because I'm not. I know people will get blown away, but I don't do great in like large social settings. I don't. I just kind of stand there, but I love people watching, so I can justify it. I like being there, but I will not be the person that walks in and be like, I'm here, bitches. Like, that's just not me. I will not walk into, I still don't want attention like that. Um, I would much prefer having a one-on-one conversation with somebody and getting to know them than be out there talking to like 10, 15,000 different people. Like, it's just not my jam.
Yeah.
So I think that was always a crutch that alcohol would have for me in social settings. And I think because of just like anxiety and other things, weed helped. But you're always chasing that high, and it just wasn't a thing for me anymore. No judgment. I literally have no judgment. It works for some people, and that I know, and there are medicinal things to it. So I don't have any judgment towards that. It just isn't for me
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's like everything else in life. It's all individual, right?
Yeah,
And just because it's one way for you doesn't mean it is for everybody else. And I think we make that mistake a lot.
for sure.
Um, but you did say something that I wanted to comment on, and now I'm kind of forgetting a little bit. But I do want to again congratulate you on the hard work that you've done, and that really it it just speaks to the inspiration that you are and all these things you've had to face, right? Because we don't overcome anything. You didn't overcome anything without looking at it in the mirror. You had to look at yourself in the mirror and you had to accept these things. Otherwise, you relapse, or otherwise you don't make these transformations in your life that get you to now protecting other people and having your voice and going through all these things that you did. And I mean, your post yesterday, I mean, I think I was like 150 comments or something. I don't know. I mean, that's inspiring. You being yourself, right? Whether, you're outspoken or whatever it is, that's empowering. And
Yeah.
that's exactly why I wanted you here today,
Oh,
because you being here, you telling your story is going to be very inspirational for my listeners. So thank you so much. Like any departing thoughts that you'd like to share?
do you? Do you how you want to do you? Be a good human to others, but more importantly to yourself. It does get better. You will get through. I am always here. When I tell you I'm not judgmental, I'm literally not judgmental. Only if you hurt children and people just in general. But children and animals, I will slash your tires. But um for the most part, just like, you're not alone. And that's why I just bang on drums like that. And I think try and see yourself in the best light as possible, because I know I think people will be surprised that you're actually inspiring other people. Like, just get out there and start doing it. And there's a lot of people that look um, to that truest version of you because people see that and people gravitate towards it. And don't listen to what all these weird, funky LinkedIn gurus say. Like, post the meme, say the funny thing, post the selfie. I don't care. Like, nobody, like, people just, we need to get back to being good humans because this world's funky. And, it started with the killer whales and now they've sent the beacon of whatever to our weather. And so now it's like the world's coming after us. So at the end of it, just be good to one another because we're probably gonna have to hunker down and, you know, be with one another and just love on each other.
Yeah.
Make that phone call, let that person know, give that extra hug, and just know that there's going to be another day.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Give that extra hug. Exactly. Make
Yeah,
that phone call.
yeah.
Steph, thank you so much for
Thank,
being here today and sharing. I can't wait for this episode to release. And of course, if you're watching this, all of Stephanie's contact information is in the show notes. Reach out to her. She's fabulous. She's got a lot of energy. And if you need somebody to help you, like talk you over that hump and stand up for yourself, she's the one. So again, thank you so much. And listeners, until next time, enjoy yourself, enjoy the moment, and try to discover what your unconscious evolution is. See you next time.